Hello everybody, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, robot, loin streamer. Oh, I forgot to say idiot, as the wall says behind me. And today is the best video of the month. It is LMIAY time. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do on this channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below for LMIAY, like we're doing today, where I give you a prompt, you submit a story to the prompt, and then first Monday video of the month, we read it together and have a hilariously good time with, or it's sad. There's a lot of murder happens. Okay, I shouldn't say hilariously. Sometimes it's hilarious. Usually it's murder. Which it can be funny, okay? It just depends. Or if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that's coming out, submit your first chapter and your cover to the Fresh Meat feature. They'll be read on this channel, and hopefully it'll help more readers find your book. And then if you would like to check out any of my books, they're available anywhere that you get books. Hopefully you check them out and have a good time, but I won't be mad if you don't. Also, clearly I'm dressed, you know, for the occasion. You'll know what I mean. Oh my gosh, you can't even see my cute sailor dress up in here, but you'll know what I mean, why I'm wearing a sailor dress once we get to what the prompt was. But even that said, I can't not represent my man. So we've got, clearly, always representing, okay? That is just what happens. So we've got some great numbers. Let's not waste time in getting into your guys' submissions because we've got some adventures to go through. The prompt this month was inspired by the Discord, a very special person on the Discord, Abigail. You know who you are. Thaumaturgist is your God-given name. But she wrote a story about, but including a boat. It was actually about an eldritch god. But including a boat for her creative writing class last semester. I hope this isn't giving up too much information. And because of the hardships around her story about the boat, we are now supporting Abigail through our submissions of boats, through the submissions of stories that have a boat central to the storyline, and there were extra points being given for boats. And there were extra points being given for short stories that include a boat as a love story. What is that extra point? Well, I will blow you a kiss. You might not want that. You might be like, I have made a mistake by taking on that extra point. And all I will say to that is, yeah, you did. But let's get into the story and see what the stories, and see what y'all did. The first story is by Mae Tanner. Someone tried the door handle. Ralia glanced up. A key grated in the lock. She grabbed Tiansa and pulled her to the side of the door. It opened, and half a dozen men entered. The men detached the furniture from the walls. Ralia and Tiansa crawled out the door, only to be blocked by another man. He frowned down at the women. "What do you think you're doing?" Ralia pointed into the room. "There's water on the floor. It's coming in through the porthole. We're afraid the ship will sink and we'll drown." He gazed into the room. "Why were you locked in there?" Tiansa sniffed. "Bat won't give me seeds. I know he got them, but he just gives me those nasty flowers. I told him I need seeds, so he locked me in there." The man's lips twisted. "Stay out of the men's way." He turned to oversee the removal of the cabin furniture. Ralia grabbed Tiansa's wrist. "Don't worry, sir. We won't get in anyone's way." She pulled the smaller woman after her, and they scampered into the deck. Bathel rolled out of the hammock and stood. Water soaked his stockings and squished between his toes. He grimaced and stripped the stockings off his feet. His head pounded. "I shouldn't have drunk so much." He shoved his bare feet into his shoes and made his way onto the deck. The sun hovered just above the western horizon, between the ship and the shoreline. Its reflection shimmered on the water. He looked over the side of the rail. Water squirted out holes just above the waterline. He couldn't see the eastern shore. A chill filled his heart. The ship could sink before they reached Kefang. He rushed to his cabin and grabbed his travel bag from his hammock. Back on deck, he stowed his bag in the ship's longboat and clambered in after it. He pulled the chain to lower the boat up to the water and set adrift once it had touched down. Bathel struggled to raise the longboat's mast. He grunted when it finally locked into place. Maybe I should have gotten some men to join me in the boat. He pulled the sail to the base of the mast. The pain in his hand flared, and he cradled it against his chest. I need seeds. He whirled around. Tiansa and Ralia crouched at the back of the boat. Tiansa crawled over the seats toward him. Her eyes glowed in the fading light, and her hair formed a gray-white cloud around her head. Where are the seeds? Her shoulders twitched. His calves struck the side of the boat, and he fell into the water. Inside the boat, the women burst into laughter. He grabbed the side of the boat and tried to climb in. Tiansa pounded his injured hand with her fist, and he shrieked as he lost grip. You ain't coming back in the boat. She pounded on his hand. Ralia came to Tiansa's side and pushed his head under the water. He let go and swam a few feet away. Let me back in the boat. We don't want you in here with us. Bitch. Both of you are bitches. Ralia shook her head. That ain't helping your case any. Look, the water's cold. Let me back in. I'll catch my death in here. Good. Tansia glared at him. I seen what you do to the clanswomen when you catch 'em. Besides, you was gonna kill me. You always kill the women you give seeds to. They die happy, though. Ralia promised I can live free with her and her husband. I ain't gonna be a slave no more. I live a long and happy life without you and your stupid seeds. What'll you do when you get twitchy? She shrugged. I ain't been twitchy since I ate those flowers you gave me. I don't need the seeds no more. A string of invective spilled from his lips. Something brushed against his leg. He glanced down. Let me in the boat. There's something in the water. I hope it eats ya. Fire flared around his ankles, and Bathel screamed. It burns! He kicked wildly, and his shoes slipped off his feet. The fire engulfed him. It crept under his pant leg. He writhed, flailing his arms and legs as he shrieked in a burning grip of whatever had hold of him. Ralia and Tiansa clutched each other as Bathel fell silent and slipped under the dark water. Ralia swallowed. Maybe we should have let him back in. Tansia shook her head. He steals women from foreign clans and tortures them. The last one just went dead inside. He traded her to a Radkin. The gods know what happened to her after. She made a warding gesture. Lights shone on them from a direction of the boat. Tiansa sighed. Ship's coming back for us. Ralia turned to look. Well, at least we'll be safe from whatever killed him. She waved her arm over her head. The longboat appeared out of the darkness and pulled up alongside them. A man tossed them a rope. Tie that to the boat. We'll get you out of here. Ralia grabbed the rope and crept to the bow of the longboat, where she tied it to an iron ring set there. She sat in the nearest seat and picked up a travel bag. What's this? Tiansa glanced at the bag. That was Bat's. He's got a wood carving in there. Ralia opened the bag. Inside, cushioned by clothing, was a glass case. The darkness obscured its contents. She stuffed the case back into the bag. We can look at it later. I like how many of you do kind of very Eldritch inspired or feeling sort of stories. Also very, very, very excited for the nautical themes of it, of doing things, because I know that I said involve a boat, but also there are many ways that you can do a boat thing without it being nautical. But that was the tension was great there. The setting of the scenes was great there. I want to know what this glass thing is. This feels like it's part of a bigger story that exists. I mean, obviously, you got that part there. There's already an establishment before you get the girls on the ship. That feels like it's in the middle of something. And then the item at the end. Clearly, this goes into something. The next story is by Allison Miller. Tessa stayed home while Claudius went to work. A notification came to her phone, pulling her out of her session of staring at the ceiling and dreading what was to come next. She'd been searching for victims missing in Utah that were later found without eyes. The oldest article was about 94 years ago. A boy with red hair detailed his dealings with his stepdad, who wanted to send him off to boarding school the minute he married his mother. They, like Tessa, had found his journals and read them, hoping to find where he went. For years, it was unsolved, until 14 years later his body was found in the Strawberry Reservoir. Surprisingly with no decay and the eyes ripped from his skull. Forensic not being what it is today, there wasn't much of an autopsy. She saw the outfit he was found in matched the last he was seen in. She copied down his name and did a few different searches for him. There was an exhibit in Ephraim that held his outfit and journal. Claudius would be at work all day, because they were behind on their work due to this ordeal. She got in her car and drove to Ephraim. She placed her phone on the passenger seat and looked to the left to see how much longer she had to wait. While seeing no end to the train, she did see the red-headed man. Seeing no one behind her, Tessa pulled into a turnaround and put her car into park, leaving her purse and phone there. He led her down the hill to the water, ordering her to sit down as he placed his cold, dead hands on her head. She was taken to 1929 in Salt Lake City, where the blue-eyed boy and man with brown hair argued under an arbor that stretched out across the sidewalk that was more like a pathway. "I know what type of man you are, Reginald." "Oh, do you, Torrance?" "Yeah. I tracked down your ex-stepdaughter. She said that you killed her mother." "No, what a clever piece of fiction. I don't know how you're going to prove it." "Oh, I will find a way," Terrence said, dramatically turning and retreating to his car. He spent a lot of time gathering witnesses and evidence, begging his mother to see the light. "He's out for your money, Mom. Your hard-earned fortune." "Oh, don't be silly," she said. He needed to act fast, as Mother was starting to get frail and sickly. Knowing that it was a sign of his future stepdad killing her and taking her fortune, he called out to God. When that didn't work, he crumbled before his father's grave and said, "Whatever is hearing me, I can't lose my mother." A blade fell before him with a note. "Spill a little of your blood, and I shall grant thy petition." Without even questioning, he did it. Stupid ass. He saw the shadow of the squid man, but Tessa saw the witch. He went with her, saying he only wanted the man to go away. She touched his chin and said, "It is done." Upon returning to his home, he saw the man lying dead on the floor, his mother holding a knife in her hand. She was taken away by the police, her fortune going to his shrewd and self-serving brother. He returned to the cemetery, the witch telling him to take the blood of the man to the strawberry reservoir and dump it there and his mother would be free. The stepfather's body rested on the unguarded table, easy picking for anyone. He hoisted the body into his car and drove to the reservoir. He tied a canoe to the top of the car. Floating out until it was far enough from the shore, he tossed the body over, nearly capsizing the boat in the process. As the boat floated down, vines came up behind him as he stared into the river, ripping his eyes from his body and taking him deep into the reservoir. Tessa couldn't pull herself out of the vision, water filling her lungs. She struggled against the vines around her neck, only being saved by a pair of hikers. She bent forward and expelled the water. Stumbling, she got to her feet. No time to explain. She returned to her car and tried to stop the shaking. Why was she involved in this? Her sister had committed too many crimes against her and others. Maybe this eye-ripping witch was Harper's punishment. Would she end up with the poor soul who just wished to save his mother, dragged to a watery grave as she's about to get a promised reward? In that moment, she had no doubt the witch was using a tenuous bond between Harper and Tessa for a bigger prize. "Claudius," Tessa said aloud. She wants Claudius. Well, this is clearly a part of a bigger thing. Again, we have like this eldritch vibe, this magic, which I love. So many of you do that, and it's very interesting. I think it's interesting that so many people that submit to this specifically have that aesthetic, but I also don't follow super pop culture. But I don't feel like, I mean, eldritch is popular, but also not. It's still kind of niche, I feel like. But a lot of people are into it, especially the tentacles. If anybody wants more of this specific story, the author has left a note saying that you can get the whole series for 99 cents right now. That is linked in the description below. The next story is by Aphrah Ashe. Hap and Suriala skimmed the surface of the one ocean as quickly as they could. They'd caught the attention of the Doom Pirate and had to push hard. There were a series of crests ahead that they could lose him in. Maybe wait him out, but on the open water, they stood no chance. "Can you go any faster, Sari?" asked Hap. He was holding onto her power orb for dear life, and he could feel himself weakening by the second. He could rest and eat and recover once they were in the crests. "I'm sorry," said Sari. She spun her motor harder, turned in her steering wings as far as they could go. Hap heard a crick from her hull and saw a crack in her wing. "Careful. Don't go too fast." An explosion in the water near them sent them off course, but Salia corrected and kept on toward the crests. Another few minutes and they'd be safe. Hap couldn't believe the Doom Pirates were using alkaline bombs against someone who had just been in its territory by accident. But there it was. Another bomb went off, and Hap held up his spyglass, one-handed, and letting go of Sariala's power orb so he could look back at the Doom Pirate. A ship with no crew. The rumors were true. How was it getting supplies then? Someone must be funding it. "Hap," said Sariala. He looked ahead, and they were entering the crests. You did a good job, Sari. Slow down. She did as he asked and let go of the power orb. Transferring energy from soul to soul was exhausting, so he sat on her deck and leaned against the bench. She wasn't a large boat, or even the fastest, but he wouldn't trade her for any other. Hap, she said again. What is it? He asked. Hap, she said again. Something was wrong. He looked back at the power orb and didn't see anything wrong. He checked the metal lining of the deck and saw no issues. A shadow passed over them from one crest, one of the ancient mountaintops he'd heard stories about, and in that shadow he saw it. A tiny crack, leaking red mist. He burst into action. He climbed past the power orb to get to his tool chest and pulled out a silvered tape and a pair of scissors. He vaulted back to where he saw the crack and took a moment to find another in the bright sunlight. He cut off a piece of tape and carefully put it along the metal track, making sure not to connect the two tracks until also completely covering the crack. Hap, said Seriala. Thank you. It was too quiet. Her voice came from a little speaker by the bench that he checked the connection, but it looked fine. We'll coast back to Ardell, said Hap. No need to rush yourself. Just hold on, preserve your mind, and we'll get you repaired. Don't worry. She started, but then cut off. He panicked and started looking for cracks, but couldn't find any. As he pulled out the oar, he was crying, hoping that she wasn't dead. He wanted her to just be asleep, resting, ready for repair. He couldn't lose her, not without telling her how he felt. There's so much emotion in this piece. It really captures panic and closeness. Or Seriala is the boat. Bro, you get the blown kiss because you included a sort of love story between the boat and the person. But there is such tension in this short piece. It is fantastic. And you get to the end and it is strong emotional boom. Very nice job, Ash. Uh-oh. We got our man. Egao is back. Egao is back to rip our hearts out and make us, or I should say, make us giggle. The piece is called Rendezvous. Rendezvous. In my native tongue. A full moon sat in the tranquil night sky. Many of the less bright stars were hidden, leaving only the brighter ones around to accompany the moon. The water was serene. Only small disruptive waves came up from time to time with much leisure and ease. Maku Maku waddled in the water, away from the part of his docks where his family were, toward the deeper part of the sea. Under the surface came one ethereal shadow with a light blue glow, its body like a floating silk pouch, contracting and releasing. Then came another. Then came more and more with different glows. Jellyfish, as if they knew where Maku Maku was heading and decided to come out in droves to light the way for him. Cloudless sky with a silver moon, colorful lights from under the water. He could not have thought of a more perfect night. From the other side of the bay, a white shadow appeared. It came gradually closer, showing its shiny, smooth white exterior, its immaculate curves, both hydronomically sound and visually stunning. Angelica. This was the shadow's name, etched on the left side of her bow. But she preferred to be called Angie by those close to her. Maku Maku waddled harder and lowered his paddle into the water and started rowing. It would create waves that could attract attention, but he just could not wait to see her. Stop paddling so hard. We'd be in big trouble if our parents saw us, Angie chuckled as she bumped her bow against Maku Maku's. What can I do? I just want to see you so much. Maku Maku inched his hull closer to Angie's. She moved closer as well, and their exterior gently rubbed against each other from the gentle wave. The touch of fiberglass definitely felt different from that of wood. If Maku Maku had an engine, it would definitely be roaring. You woodens, always in such a rush, Angie giggled. She did not seem to mind. Your parents didn't see you, right? Maku Maku asked. No worries. The fiberglass are all asleep at this hour. Huh. Any of the woodens are still having a gathering about salmon, Maku Maku sighed. Just this moment, melodic and pleasant humming came from a further part of the sea. A few shadows jumped out of the water and fell back in, like they were singing and dancing at the same time. The whales sound so sad tonight. Maku Maku tried his hardest to appear sensitive and romantic. I wonder what they're singing. Their love songs? Or about their hopes and dreams? I'd like to think it's their love songs. Angie let out a relaxed exhale. Ugh, you youngsters are so cringe. A cute but somehow cynical voice came from the bow of Angie. Mr. Skippy. Mr. Skippy. Maku Maku and Anju almost jumped out of the water as they recognized the voice. What are you doing here? You need to check your deck before you go out to sea. An orange furry feline yawned as he walked up Angie's bow. I was eating a can of tuna and passing out 1 minute, and then the next, I'm listening to whale booty calls. Booty calls? Maku Maku felt his bow was getting hot, and his paddles were uneasy. Yeah. Mr. Skippy raised the fluffy, pointed ears and paused for a while. You hear that? That was whale. For someone come and give it to me. Okay, Mr. Skippy. We don't need... And she tried to cut the cat with an attitude. Oh ho, and another whale just asked the other guy how much shrimp he can bring home each week. No shrimp, no booty. Mr. Skippy laughed out loud. We get it, Mr. Skippy. Maku Maku interrupted the cat. Can I bring you back to the docks? Well, sure. Mr. Skippy hopped over to Maku Maku. Your girls interior gets cold at night. Come back soon. Be careful. Angie sighed. We don't want another wooden versus fiberglass quarrel. Of course. Maku Maku bumped Angie slightly before paddling away. See you soon. The night was still young, and the jellyfish horde seemed to be still waking up, as more of them seemed to be coming out from under the water. Maku! To Maku Maku's surprise, his parents were waiting for him when he returned to the wooden side of the docks. Where are you? I just went for a quick stroll, Maku Maku stammered. What? I can do that, right? Were you out with a girl? His mother came closer, imposing. You know we don't want you dating so soon. Yeah, his father came in closer. We don't want you bumping bellies either. You're not ready for children. Dad, Maku Maku whined. Not just children, his mother raised her voice. What if you caught muscles? They're itchy and they never go away. Promise me that you'll only bump bellies safely. Mom! Maku Maku felt like he could sink himself. No worries, folks. At this moment, Mr. Skippy jumped onto the docks from Maku Maku's back. He just went out there to see the jellyfish. They're putting on a show tonight. Jellyfish? Ugh. Maku Maku's father turned back. All right, as long as you're steering clear of girls and muscles. Don't stay out too long. Maku Maku's mother floated up and down, then started paddling away as Mr. Skippy licked his paws on the wooden panels. They're gonna have a meeting about salmon later. You should come by. Sure, Mom. Maku Maku slowly turned away, then whispered to the cat. Thank you, mister. You owe me one, kid. Mr. Skippy yawned again, then disappeared between the dustbin and the bait shop. You know what you can do. You know what to do come salmon season. Maku Maku chuckled, then turned around and started paddling again. The jellyfish lit up the sea. It was like fireworks, but from under the water. What a perfect night. Egao, I have a hard time understanding how your original work is not going to be, like, as fun as this. I mean, obviously, you write... I mean, I think you warned me that your stuff that's in Amazon is more dramatic. And I will figure out exactly how dramatic soon, because I'm going to be reading that very soon. But you write such a fun story. This is so creative and playful. Also, you obviously, you know, double hit the thing. So get prepared for the awkward cringe. There's your extra point. I know. That was a terrible choice for me to make, but now I have to live with it, okay? So this was so fun though, and so sweet, and muscles and girls. Watch out for them muscles. The next story is by our very own daddy of the whole, Mike VanHoose. The raft flipped sideways in turbulent waters, tossing a pair of newlyweds into a violent white churning froth. Their boat bounded against car-sized boulders. Whitewater guides cautioned the pair not to try the rapids this time of year, but they didn't listen. Both were experienced rafters and felt comfortable with the flow. Excessive rainfall had pushed the usual benign creek into a destructive force of nature. The power raged as the pair were left at the mercy of the current. Hold on! Was all that Chloe McNally had time to yell to her new husband, Decker, as they were rushed down a small waterfall and into a whirlpool. Its swirl caught Decker, pulling him close to the edge on the rocks and below the surface. Chloe floated downstream toward calmer waters. Decker's life vest surfaced just beyond the eddy without him in it. Frantically searching, Chloe realized that Decker was not going to surface in the same place that he went down. Walking the bank of the creek back toward the area where the raft overturned, she scanned close to the edge for any signs of life, hoping that he could make his way to her from wherever he'd escaped the water's grasp. Decker was a survivalist, and he knew the area well. He could manage until they reconnected. She would just have to shelter in place until he found her. No sign of Decker, other than his life vest, was in the area. The raft was trapped against a brush pile of old limbs caught on the side of a submerged willow. Dragging it out, she propped it against a tree and collapsed. It was not the honeymoon suite she'd envisioned, nor was it the way that she'd hoped to spend the first night as a married woman. But it would have to do. Shock and exhaustion stole on her quickly as she lost herself in complete nothingness. "Time to get up, lazy bones." She could hear Decker's voice urging her to start her day. She blindly reached her hand to stroke his hair. She was met with damp rocks and a hard rubber life raft. Damn it. Just a dream. She remembered capsizing, choking, gasping. Then she remembered that she was here alone. Cool morning air brushed her chilled skin. She was surprised to see how far the creek dropped. Her clothes were still wet. Not giving up hope, she took her life vest as well as Decker's, and she opened her pockets. He always carried extra supplies in waterproof bags, just in case. She was disappointed. Didn't matter. Her raft was propped against a tree. She had shelter. Any moment, Decker would show up with a rescue team, and they could continue with their honeymoon as planned, with a hell of a story to tell their grandkids. The day warmed quickly. She decided to concentrate on keeping her mind occupied. Decker would be along any time. She opted to give herself a good, thorough physical. She hadn't looked herself over after the raft flipped. Scanning her body, she found nothing of concern, other than a knot on her head and some bruising on her arms. Her head was tender and sore. Pulling her shirt off, she saw a blood trail caked in the collar and back. By the stains on her shirt, she could have used some stitches. No matter. The blood had stopped flowing. It would leave an ugly scar, but it was well within her hairline that no one would ever see it. As the day passed, she felt a curious draw from the spot where she pulled the raft out from the water. Without knowing how she got there, she soon found herself standing on the bank of a now lazy creek. Its once powerful flow had dropped completely. The creek looked like it returned to normal levels. It was good. The search party would be here in no time. A gentle wind blew through the trees. Chloe could smell a sweet sickness being carried with it. Rot? Decay? Another wind gusted, much stronger than before, and pushed the raft from its temporary home against the tree where Chloe placed it. It tumbled through the trees and landed in the same spot that it had come to rest on the day of their accident. Chloe looked in disgust and thought, "Damn, now I'll have to drag the stupid thing back where I had it." Resigning herself to moving the raft again, Chloe approached the edge of the bank. She saw something caught in the brumble pile beneath it. Stooping to scan for a better look, she squinted and strained her eyes to see the outline of an arm resting on the branch of a willow. "Here it is! We found it!" Chloe's head snapped as she heard a voice cut through the underbrush. A team of volunteer rescuers suddenly appeared, looking through the group of 5 men. She saw the one she longed for. Decker had come for her. "Decker! I'm here! I'm here!" She tried shouting above the bustling activity spurred by the rescue crew. Chainsaws revved to life as branches fell all around her, drowning out her cries of relief as men shouted to one another in a frenzy. Running toward him, she stopped by the side of the raft as the crew lifted it out of the willow perch. There, she saw a body lying still in the limbs. It was bloated and decaying. Chloe saw Decker fall to his knees. "That's her. Dear God in heaven, that's her." His cries filled the forest as the team continued, clearing debris away from the raft. Decker did not join them. He remained on his knees. An older gentleman placed a hand on his shoulder and held a Bible in his hand, speaking softly as he did. "Her journey's over, son. She's in the hands of the shepherd now." Chloe looked on in amazement, reaching out to take Decker by the arm, to assure him that she was okay and the body lying in the dense willow brush was not her. She saw something that made her freeze. She saw her arm. It was black. Looking at the corpse, now being pulled out of the willow, she could see familiar things. Her shirt, earrings, and engagement ring all remained on her body. Feeling the bump of her head, she heard one of the men at her corpse speak. "Looks like she drowned. Her skull feels fractured at the base of her neck. She probably hit her head underwater, lost consciousness, and never woke up. It's hard to tell. We'll know more when we get her back for an autopsy. Surprised the body is as well preserved. It's been more than a week since it happened. The examiner looked at her body in pity, shaking his head as he walked away. Decker stood and walked to the body. Chloe looked on as he approached her dead corpse, lying on the ground. She screamed at me. The last thing I heard her say was, "I can't hold on," before she slipped under the... Decker lost himself in sorrow as the crew covered her body with a blanket. Trying to be respectful, he regained some composure and took her by her cold hand. "I'm so sorry, Chloe. I love you so much." Chloe looked at the scene with morbid fascination. She saw her own dead body, covered in mud and leaves. She saw the work crew hustling about. Most of all, she saw Decker, holding her lifeless hand, crying softly as he did. Kneeling beside him, she felt a sense of finality overcome her as she spoke to him one last time before she faded. "I love you too, Decker." Very nice use of suspense and mood and building. And also, like, when this first started out, I'm sitting here imagining the kinds of stories that Mr. Ballin usually covers, with like people going places where they're told, "Don't go there, you're probably going to die because this is dangerous, this is a dangerous situation, and you're not prepared for it as well as you think that you are." That's what this felt like. And then you just took it in this completely different direction. Very strong emotion written into that as well. Great prose and description and building of the suspense and the scenes. Very nice, my dude. I think that's the strongest piece from you I've read so far. The next story is by L.L Newell. I had always known about my uncle's houseboat. He loved it and was always ready with a story that began, "Once on my boat." I never got the chance to hear the end of those stories, though. Mom was quick to send us away whenever he told one. She was determined to raise good young ladies. I was 15 and not allowed to watch television unless one of my parents were in the room. We never owned a computer, and we had been removed from public school when I was halfway through first grade because Mom had become concerned by the ungodly influence of my teachers with the dyed blue hair and the crude humor of my 6-year-old peers. People always said that she was overprotective. They didn't understand. When she was young, she'd had her childhood stolen from her by the adults that she should have been able to trust. She'd escaped them and built a new family. One that she wouldn't trust anyone else with. Maybe she was right. 2 months ago, Dad had trusted his best friend, and now we were homeless. Not really, I reminded myself as I walked across the dock into the boat itself. Now we have Uncle's boat to stay in, and even if it was small, it was larger than our van that we'd been living out of for the past 3 weeks, and it would be a roof over our head for the winter. Stepping inside, I struggled to keep my spirit up. A closet, bathroom, and a few cupboards were the only spaces afforded the luxury of a door. I glanced at my older sister, Jenny. We both understood, without having to discuss it, that we'd be sleeping on the floor. Our little sister, Casey, would be sleeping on the loveseat. Dad was still recovering from his surgery, and it was impossible for him to get up or down off the floor, so he and Mom would be on the bed. The only other furniture was a minibar where the kitchen should have been, and a small wood pellet stove. "So much for privacy," Jenny mumbled. I nodded. I was already looking for a place to keep my duffel bag, the only personal belongings I'd been able to keep after we'd lost our home. None of us could keep much, only what we could fit in the van, and most of that space had been taken up by canned food and our school books. I looked out the port window. Mom was still in the parking lot hugging her bag. There hadn't been space for her and Dad to keep whole duffels, and a large purse that she had allowed herself was mostly filled with paperwork, our birth certificates, their marriage license, social security cards, almost nothing for herself. She was just standing there, looking at the boat with a blank expression and a weight behind her eyes. Behind her, Dad was still in her van, slumped in the passenger seat. He was crying. I'd only seen Dad cry 3 times in my life within the last 8 weeks. To see him broken had been the worst part of it. Like most children, I'd always believed my dad was the strongest person in the world, that there was nothing that he couldn't fix. It didn't scare me to see him broken now. It made me angry. Angry that something had attacked our family, and that whatever that thing was, it thought it could win. I looked away from her and noticed Casey looked afraid. I wondered what the heroines of my favorite books would do. The Joe Marks, the Sarah Crews, Corrie ten Booms, Laura Ingalls, and Anne Shirley's. I clung to lessons that they taught me, that there was no such thing as a really hopeless situation and no excuse to feel helpless. In those stories, there was always a chance for a last-minute miracle. Always a choice between moving forward and giving up. If I could just hold on through this part of my story, then maybe someday I'd also get a happy ending. What was I supposed to hold on to, though? Myself? False positivity? The past? I lifted my head and looked closer. I lifted my head and looked closer at my new home. This isn't so bad, I told Casey. Look at this. This neat stained glass. Look at this neat stained glass, I mumbled, pointing at a tiny window above the bed. I bet that looks beautiful at sunset. Next to me, Jenny was quick to catch on. Oh yeah, she smiled. It's like our own special pirate ship. Casey looked around the room with wide eyes. Really? She asked. Jenny nodded. Yeah, and I think I saw a forest up the road in a way. I bet it's magical. I hit a snort. Magic wasn't how I would describe the thin tree line and the roots covered in garbage and broken glass, but Casey's eyes lit up with excitement as possibilities filled her imagination. I moved to the minibar. I'll get some PB&Js started for lunch. Jenny sent Casey back out to grab some dandelions from the edge of the gravel parking lot. Then she fished around in one of the cupboards and made our parents' beds with clean sheets. I laid out a towel across the floor that would later be my bed and set up a picnic. When Casey brought back the dandelions, Jenny put them in a plastic cup and set them down like a centerpiece, and I lit the stove just as the rain started to come down. There was something soothing about the sound of a fire, crackling along with the rain on the tin roof. Our little boat almost felt cozy. When my dad composed himself, my parents came in. They found us full and happy, telling stories about pirates around a plastic cup of wishes. The weight didn't leave my mom's eyes, and the fear was still settled in my dad's. But in the look that passed between them just a moment, I also saw hope. I could hold on to hope. Giving me chills, dude. That was such a nice build and such a sweet little story of just everything being garbage, but being able to find hope and coming together as a family. I love this piece. Also, great imagery and great setting, like emotional setting through mentions of creating the location. The next story is by Semantic Dragon. Jason stepped up to the bow of the old yacht, brass urn in hands, and gazed out at the setting sun. It was hard to believe that such a small canister could hold the remains of a whole person, even after they'd been incinerated. They had arrived, their old coordinates of the case. Lily, he said to the urn, choking on his words. He reminisced as he collected himself. They'd met in college, sharing a single class that fit both their otherwise desperate majors, a class on literature to fill in their humanities. As much as they fought over interpretations of the text, he'd never imagined she'd say yes to a cup of coffee or a dinner, much less how far they'd go. 4 years later, just after graduating, they'd tied the knot. It wasn't easy. Her parents hated him and cut her off. His parents had nothing to offer but support. But they'd soldiered on, pushed through the thick and thin. Together, when food had gotten tight, she started a garden. When they'd turned off the heat, he chopped wood. And when their ship had come in, they'd sailed off on it. Together. Lily, this is it. Our last goodbye. He breathed through a tight throat. She'd given him 2 beautiful children, countless memories, a whole life to look upon with pride and joy. It was hard to say who was the most devastated when the cancer hit. It ravaged her body and tore out his heart to see the vibrant, incredible woman wasting away before her time. But still, they had each other. Her words lingered with him as the boat shifted from side to side, swayed by the waves. I'm not afraid for me, Jay. I'm afraid for you. I don't want my death to be yours. Promise me that you'll think of the good times and you'll make up for those years that I've costed you. He had promised her, but looking back, he smiled and shook his head. Before I say that, though, I wanted to tell you, you didn't cost me any years. Every second with you was a gift. Rest now, my love. Voyage the ocean, as you always dreamt. It took only one swing of his arm to unleash the cloud of ash. The breeze swept up against his back as he finished the moment, carrying the remains far off and into the ocean. He watched until the last clot of dust had dispersed and sank into the waves. Goodbye, Lily, he said with an unexpected calm. She was really gone, forever, but a part of her would always be with him. Goodbye. Y'all be writing emotional pieces today. Starting the year off crying. YOLO. Are we still YOLOing in 2023? I don't know. But let's start this off with cancer. Great emotional build to this too. Like, fantastic work though, with just building the emotions. So much promise in your work. The next story is by NXRD. Or, our boy Nightmare. as some of us like to call. I hope that doesn't count as doxing. I've left the land behind on our new journey to the unknown. It's been weeks since I've seen land and I'm tired. The captain has remained at the helm since we started this journey. I haven't seen him since. I left behind my loved ones. I couldn't bear to see them. No, not like this. Stewing in my own turmoil of the bills and lies, the chance to leave was too perfect. The chance to leave was just too perfect. So I didn't wait. They'd always ask me, "How are you?" My reply would range from okay to miserable every time. A chaste or scoff would follow. I hated it. It always hurt to tell them, but something in me always wanted the attention. A simple, "things are good," was what I knew they wanted to hear. I never gave them that. Now, I never will. This was always intended to be a one-way trip, and I'm not coming back. When I looked at the night sky, it wasn't particularly comfortable. The air smelled of salt with hints of iron for good measure. The sea billows held a calm, peaceful rhythm as the wind lapped over. The horizon held a dull, still orange glow, much like my breath. It felt like I was almost there, but I didn't know what there was. The captain never told me. All I knew was that there was an escape from the now, from the here, from my old life. I know how disgusting I am and how selfish and how ineffective I am, and not one of those I've abandoned will forgive me. Least of all my girlfriend, who is probably pregnant, and though I prayed and tried to avoid her, things just kept happening. We just kept feeding our lust. I know it kept her happy, but it ate at me every time. Leaving her place and reaching mine in shame with my principles and shards. The car will probably damage her credit too. I've been lying for months about having paid it off, parking it in odd places to avoid the repo. She'll eventually find out now, along with all the eviction notices that have piled up in my apartment. This ship was really my only way out. Maybe. But it's too late at this point. Everyone has probably found the truth by this point. I've been long gone. All that's left for them to ask is, where does this ship port? The fork in the river Styx is always the big question. Bro went up and killed himself. Bro, I'm seeing a theme of writing some turmoilian main characters. That's a word now, turmoilian. For just the kind of guy that first the one with the hotel at the convention, and then we got some turmoil with some people not dealing with the issues in their lives, and then making that guy killed himself too. Interesting themes. Also, I can't help that I said like hell yeah when I saw Styx at the bottom of this, because obviously I've got an attachment to that now because of body porn. I'm like, this is great mood setting and great build up to the reveal of being on the boat and how he escaped. The next story is by our very own Chiky Scares You. You know, the night that you lost your virginity. I remember you. You know who you are. You know what you did. The water rocked the boat gently. The sun was scorching, but the wind was fresh. A storm was coming later for sure. Iknu jumped off the boat, diving into the lake. He swam deep, drowning the laughs of Hadi and Akher, until only the entrancing sound of water remained. The bottom of the boat wasn't far down. Fish swam nearby, unaffected by his presence. Iknu stopped swimming and looked up. The boat was right above him, still distant. He stared for a while, until he started to run out of air and swam back up. "Believe in that," Hadi was saying. "It will happen when the sun is right on our heads," Akher replied. "Isn't that right, Iknu?" He shook his head and got back into the boat, careful not to turn it over. "What?" "Today at midday, the city will make the ritual," Akher said, his voice serious. "Today they will wake up one of the gods." "I thought you knew," Iknu said, turning to Hadi. She looked both surprised and scared. "You're kidding. It's not today." "That's why we're here." Hadi covered her eyes with a hand and stared at the sky. "We barely have any time to get back," she said. "You're not being serious, are you?" "I am," Hadi said, grabbing one of the paddles. Akher intercepted the paddle before it touched the water, making the boat swing. "Don't be so boring. Do you really want to go and pray?" "I don't want to face the wrath of whichever god they are going to wake up." She snatched the paddle from the hand and put it in the water, but it didn't move. She turned her head to where the town was and remained motionless. "Seems like she changed her mind," Iknu said. He ate 2 grapes and jumped off the boat again. "Come on. The water is fresh, amazing with the sun." Aphrah laughed and jumped in the water with no hesitation, threatening to overturn the boat. Haiti, however, didn't even blink, still staring at the coast. "Let's see who can reach the bottom first," Aphrah said, diving first. "That's cheating," Iknu laughed, following him. Aphrah was a great swimmer. Iknu knew that he was going to lose, but he still tried to reach him. Aphrah reached the bottom when Iknu still had a fair amount of meters left to cover. He pushed himself off the lake's bottom and swam back up, pushing Iknu on his way up. Iknu laughed and turned around, following him. "You cheater," Iknu said, splashing water in him as soon as he was able to. "You can only win with cheats." "You're too slow, Iknu. Too slow. Will you—" He muted. "Haiti? Are you trying to—" Iknu muted too. Both of them stared at the empty boat for a second, then looked back. Aphrah was the first to go underwater and search for her. Iknu followed. She couldn't be seen. "Haiti!" Iknu screamed, looking around. "Is she lying on the boat?" Aphrah said, swimming toward it. "She's not here. The coast is too far away. No way she reached it swimming." "Haiti! This isn't funny!" Aphrah screamed. "Where are you?" There was no reply except for small waves crashing against the boat. "Are you sure she's not in the water?" Iknu said. Instead of answering, Aphrah dived back in. Iknu followed him. They searched frantically for some minutes, but Haiti was gone. "She's not in the water," Aphrah said, jumping to the boat. He helped Iknu to get in before talking. "She just vanished, as if—" He covered his eyes with a hand and stared at the sun. The ritual already begun. "There's no way that she swam all the way to the coast before we reached the bottom. It's impossible. What if the god they were waking up took her?" "You don't believe in that, do you?" Iknu said, covering his eyes and staring at the sky too. "I can't explain it otherwise." They remained silent, slowly rocked by the waves, looking around in case Haiti was swimming nearby. But she wasn't. The wind and waves stopped. The boat slowly got still. It took only a few seconds to notice that it was getting darker. The sun is vanishing," Iknu interrupted, looking at the sky through the space between his fingers. Aphrah didn't reply. They just sat, motionless, on the still boat until the sky turned black for an instant and then red. "What is going on?" Aphrah whispered, as if it was afraid to speak out loud. The water turned into blood. The coast painted in red looked further away than normal, as if the lake had grown in its size. "Looks like blood," Iknu said in barely a whisper. "It doesn't look like blood. It is blood," Aphrah said, horror tainting his tone. "Don't be ridiculous," Iknu replied, touching the water. It was just then when the metallic smell reached them. Instantly, he pulled his hand away. The substance on his fingers was warm and thick. The two teens shared looks of dread. Iknu wanted to speak, but horror paralyzed him. And then the boat moved, first gently, like rocked by small waves, but the lake was completely still. Then the boat rotated, still in the same place. Iknu clenched his hands at the boat's edge, his eyes wide open, his heart smashing his ribs so hard that he was sure Aphrah could listen to it. But the boat stopped. What? The crying of hundreds of people silenced him. They sounded too close. Men, women, children, all crying in agony and fear, deafening. Iknu covered his eyes with his hands. Iknu covered his ears with both hands, and Iknu covered his ears with both hands to stop the noises, but it had no effect. The crying was so loud that it hurt his ears. He closed his eyes and bent forward without moving his hands away. "Stop!" he screamed. The voices obeyed his command. "I see you," a soft female voice said, distant but clear. "All alone?" Iknu opened his eyes. The red light cast dark shadows on the boat, and he was alone. The thought of calling for Aphrah crossed his mind, but he didn't dare to speak. "I see you," the same voice said, this time closer, softer. "Tell me, can you see me?" Every single muscle in his body was tense. The boat got rocked violently. "Can you see me?" the voice repeated. Waves emerged from under the boat and away from it. Against his will, Iknu looked at the water. With the movement, the boat turned over. He thought that he'd be received by blood, but the water was clear again. Right beneath him, under the red light of the sun, a giant eye the size of the lake was staring at him. I don't know why this whole time I'm just imagining Avatar, because I've never seen Avatar, and I don't think that this is accurate to that, but this whole time I'm imagining them as blue people. I don't know how to help you with that. But interesting tension. And also these guys definitely had a young feeling to them. I mean, it said they were teenagers down here. They definitely embrace like this feeling of youth and this feeling of rejecting the traditions of whatever, except for, you know, Haiti was like, no. Very nice. The next story is by KawaiiGroovycat, and I just gotta add her note in here that says, just gonna say sorry, not sorry to anyone who thought the cringe stream would mark the end of cringe. It's only just begun. But maybe don't read/listen to this at work. I already love you, Groovycat. I'm so excited to read this just from that note. Cringe doesn't have to end at cringe stream, that's for sure. In the depths of the Pacific, a whale belts the same sad ballad every day and every night. His wails reverberated even past the Pacific, but it no longer mattered to him. He had grown to hate every square inch of the sea ever since the day he felt his life may as well have ended. He could still remember her gorgeous red hole, what it felt like to run his flipper over it. She had been surprisingly ticklish, especially in a very sensitive spot of hers. The edge of his flipper brushed against her gunwale. Careful, the boat said, letting out a giddy giggle. I might capsize. It's so late out here, the whale had said. Where are you headed, milady? I'm going back to California coast tonight. The whale twiddled the tips of his flippers. I don't suppose that you could spare an hour or two? I'm sure that I can make it work, the boat replied. I don't think the humans inside me will even notice, given that they are all fast asleep. Ah, yes, that had been the interaction that solidified in the whale's mind that she was his soulmate, and in his heart, he was sure that she felt the same way. Water was an amazing conductor of electricity, so surely she could feel it too, right? The electric chemistry that charged every word spoken between them. The two of them had begun a love affair along the Southern Californian coast, warming up the frigid ocean with their love. Just an hour or two in the evening, but each second felt fragile and ethereally brief. There were long stretches of days in a row where they could not meet, for the boat had places to go and people to carry. I'll come back for you, she'd said, and the whale would wait for her day and night, both of his blowholes twitching in excitement and anticipation. When the boat appeared one night, he playfully greeted her by splashing her. The boat giggled. Not gonna lie, it's kinda nice to be splashed by anything other than vomit. The whale's dorsal fin drooped. Ew, too much information, he said in mock disgust. The boat pouted. Hey, you try being ridden by 3 frat boy marine biology majors at heck o'clock a.m. and not getting puked on even once. I don't exactly have a choice in that matter, but I've long accepted the inevitability. I guess I can't argue with that, the whale replied. But you know what I can do? What? The whale huffed from his blowhole. I can wash away your worldly woes with unadulterated ecstasy. Yeah, I hate myself for that line too. Unlike the author, the boat didn't cringe upon hearing the whale say that. In fact, she did quite the opposite. She swooned dramatically. Oh, where have you been all my life? Wherever either of them had been. It didn't matter anymore now that they were beginning to warm up the chilly sea. Everything about the boat was gorgeous. Her hull was immaculate, and the whale found it amusing that her sidelights would flash when he touched some of her more sensitive areas with his flippers. The lights were red and green, which was funny since Christmas was over almost a week ago. Even so, that didn't at all detract from the boat's attractiveness. In fact, every little quirk of hers only added to her sex appeal. Her sultry boat noises were a sweeter melody than the songs whales could sing, and they made his dork vibrate in lust and animalistic need. Her stern was ripe and tender, despite it not being made of flesh or whatever goes into Brazilian butt lifts. But the part of her he desired most to do carnal things with was her propeller. May I? The whale began, but trailed off, suddenly growing shy. The boat had never told anyone, but her propeller was her sweetest of sweet spots. She shifted invitingly, having to hold back from the outright begging the whale to touch it, to take it, to do beyond nasty things to it. The whale did not hesitate to lunge on top of her and grind his dork against her propeller. The blade stimulated it in a way that nothing else ever could come close to achieve. The blade stimulated it in a way that nothing else could ever come close to achieving. Between the whale's grunts, the boat's continued sultry boat noises, and the loud, rough waves they created with their passionate lovemaking, no creature in the ocean would be able to avoid hearing how much these lovers desired and needed each other as their carnal embrace literally shook the sea. They could feel it. Both of them were close. It wouldn't be long before we reached the climax of this tale. About fucking time, right? It certainly did feel right. But at the same time, something about this particular boat fuckery felt eerily wrong in a way that neither of them could put their finger on, and not just because either of them had fingers, so to speak of. And not just because neither of them had fingers, and not just because neither of them had fingers to speak of. And then the boat's propeller really turned on. The boat was built for speed. And it was how she had managed to maintain a love affair in her busy life. But whoever had made her had thought that it would be an amazing idea to make those propeller blades extremely sharp. The whale realized about 5 seconds too late that his dork was stuck in said blades. They shredded his dork, but he was unable to get it off. The pain overpowered him, and at this point, an actual castration would have hurt way less. Still, he tried to push himself off of the boat, but that was his biggest mistake. The whale just so happened to be plus size, so he weighed way more than the average whale. He had tried not to hurt the boat by accident, but he ended up falling back down in an attempt of rescuing what remained of his poor dork, and the impact left a crack in her that was so big that water filled her up inside, instead of what she really wanted to be filled with, and she drowned. The whale never recovered from the grief and trauma that he had experienced that night. From then on, booming wails of sadness assaulted the ears of everyone who was unfortunate enough to be within earshot of him. But the whale didn't care anymore. He hated the ocean and everything in it, as he hated the land and himself. The sea felt lifeless without her. He may as well have already been dead, and eventually, due to starvation and self-neglect, he would be. The end. Finally. I don't know what kind of magic you have to fill a story with both sorrow, memes, and a boat romance. KawaiiGroovycat, you are a magician. That was so good. I feel like this is just the start of the cringe. I am excited for what 2023 has to offer because this is how we do it. This is the boat romance that we have needed to follow up the Titanic in the last 30 years. Where is James Cameron to do the next great love story between the deep blue sea and a boat? Chop chop. We need a movie deal right now. GroovyCat, get her made. Beautiful, absolute beautiful work. Shock and awe. And just for that story, because poor whale is without his propeller, or is without his dork, you get two cringes. I mean, blown kisses, but cringes. Okay. That said, those were all of the stories that made it to this month. There were so many entries. I think the most entries that we've ever had so far for LMIAY. As you guys keep coming in with more stories, more brilliance, it is getting harder to pick who goes in to LMIAY. So I'm sorry for the people that didn't make it. But thank you so much for submitting. Let me know what your favorite story was down in the comments below. You probably know what mine are. The freaking between Egao and GroovyCat. I'm sorry everybody else, but like, step it up. You gotta step it up. Let's go Model Land style craziness. That said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great week. Happy New Year. Don't die. It's gonna be a good one. We are gonna freaking get the knife out and make it a good one. Freaking threaten this here for something worth it. We are not having a repeat of the last 3 years. Hello, boomers! My name is Yanananana. How are you feeling today? In case you didn't know, I'm a YouTuber from Nide, a small town in eastern Ukraine.
My family has never really understood what I do in the woods, but all I've ever wanted is to make a better life for us all. Papa always comes home from the mines dirty, angry, and tired. It's a necessary evil to do your job and be in a place that you don't want to be. But I've never wanted to spend my life doing exactly what was necessary of me. Everything changed for me when a couple of Americans appeared at my door. They said they wanted to sponsor my channel and handed me military-grade explosives. Can you believe it? Military-grade. The lights will be incredible going forward. With this help, my videos will be next level. I just hope they are as they say, and this isn't some kind of trick. I mean, what would there be to gain? Boris says people are simple. Everything comes down to money and power. And Alex tells me ignorance will not save me from trouble. I understand where they are coming from, but I do not like to think that way. There is more to life than a cruel of superficial goods, hatred, and destruction. Anyway, I do not like where this video is going, so I will see you on the explosives field. Boom, boom, boom. Salute.